Match of the day with all the Premiership action in 20 minutes here on BBC One after the news with Matthew Amroliwala.
3 powerful explosions in the Indian capital kill more than 50 people. India's Prime Minister blames terrorists and vows to track them down. The NHS the public wants, the biggest ever consultation exercise. A political pounding, but President Bush insists he remains focused on the job. And easy does it. New Zealand beat Great Britain in Rugby League's Tri-Nations. Good evening. More than 50 people have been killed by 3 bomb blasts in the heart of the Indian capital, Delhi. The country's Prime Minister called the apparently coordinated attacks an act of terrorism. Tonight, 10 people are being held in custody and the whole nation is on high alert. The bombs struck areas packed with shoppers, 2 in crowded markets and a 3rd on a bus. Paul Adams reports.
A crowded market reduced to smoke and rubble, packed with shoppers at the time of the first explosion. The wholesale market with its flimsy stalls, the softest of targets. And with major Hindu and Muslim festivals just days away, the whole area busier than ever. 2 more explosions followed in quick succession. Here in another neighborhood market, the streets again teeming with holiday shoppers. Several passengers died on this bus. No claims of responsibility so far, but conclusions already being drawn.
India will never be defeated by terrorism. The Prime Minister said that all the nefarious designs of terrorists will be defeated. He has asked the people of India to remain calm.
Not easy in a city traumatized by scenes like this. The dead and injured were rushed to hospitals across Delhi, many of the survivors suffering from terrible burns. Indians of all faiths were caught up in the horror. Politicians are urging a collective response.
Terrorism is something that is a menace that we all have to face and fight together.
India is no stranger to politically motivated violence. In an audacious suicide attack, Kashmiri militants stormed the Parliament building in Delhi in 2001. 2 years later, more than 50 people were killed in 2 car bombs in Mumbai. Again, Kashmiri militants were blamed. Efforts to resolve the Kashmir dispute have faltered more than once, but India and Pakistan have been talking again today. This month's massive earthquake has helped to foster dialogue. India offered help, sending aid to the main disaster zone. Today, the Pakistani government condemned the Delhi bombs, calling them barbaric. Later, reports said the 2 sides had agreed to allow survivors of the earthquake to move across the disputed border. It's the kind of gradual progress that could be jeopardized by today's violence, and perhaps that's the point, to keep India and Pakistan at loggerheads. Whatever the motive, some see a shift in tactics in the latest attacks.
They have hit at symbolic key targets in some of the major cities. This time, they've actually gone after civilians, and that is a dangerous, new and disturbing departure.
Amid fears of further attacks, markets across Delhi have closed down. As the investigation gets underway, a number of arrests have already been made. Shockwaves are being felt across this vast country. Paul Adams, BBC News.
Well, a short time ago, I spoke to the BBC's Paul Danaher in Delhi. He was at the scene minutes after the blasts.
I arrived shortly after the blast took place in Sarojini Nagar Market, and it was a scene of carnage. An area about 80 metres square was completely devastated. As I arrived, I saw 3 bodies being carried out on makeshift stretchers. The fire brigade were dousing the flames of the building that had been engulfed in fire, and the police were setting up barricades, trying to keep people back. At that stage, they didn't know whether another device might go off. It's much calmer now. The bodies and the injured have been taken away by the emergency services. The police have sealed the area off, and they're now sifting through the rubble, trying to find clues to who may have carried out these attacks.
And is it any clearer from what the government is saying who they think might be behind the attacks?
They've not said yet, and I think that the key thing is that India has come under attack before. The capital has come under attack before, but not on this scale and not these kind of coordinated attacks. But it's too early to say. What they did do was attack all communities, all faiths, because the markets that are used by Indians who are Muslims, who are Christians, who are Hindus. So whoever they were going for, they got everybody.
Elsewhere in India, more than 100 people are now confirmed dead after a train crashed in the south of the country. Several carriages fell into floodwaters when a bridge collapsed near Hyderabad. Many passengers were trapped in the wreckage for hours. The largest ever public consultation on the future of the NHS in England is drawing to a close. 1,000 people have been debating in Birmingham what frontline services they would like to see. Our health correspondent Bramwell Jeffries reports.
Patricia Hewitt wants to do more than eavesdrop. She wants to pinch their ideas. And the patients here are clear about what they want. A health service that's more user-friendly and easier to access.
My ministers and I will come back and be directly accountable to the public and say, this is what you asked for. Some of this we may not have been able to do in exactly the way you wanted us to, and this is why. And here are the ideas you gave us.
Ministers say this isn't simply a stunt. There are plans to report back on which ideas become policy.
What I'd like to see the changes is easier access to GP, the appointment system being easier.
For Mel Figures, this is the NHS, a nurse visiting him at home. Most patients don't go to hospital, so changes in community services can have a big impact.
On average, about 1 million people visit a GP every day. Millions go in to see a pharmacist every day. This is what people really judge the NHS by. Going to a hospital is something they do fairly rarely.
The patients here haven't been given a blank sheet, but still, this level of consultation is unprecedented. How much difference it's made will only be clear when the government publishes its own plans later this year. Bramwell Jeffries, BBC News, Birmingham.
A British soldier was killed and 5 others injured after they came under fire in northern Afghanistan. The peacekeeping troops were patrolling the city of Mazar-e-Sharif, which had been regarded as relatively secure. At least 25 people have been killed in a car bomb attack north of Baghdad. The explosion happened in the main street of a Shiite village near Bakuba, minutes before the start of evening prayers. President Bush is insisting he won't be distracted by the resignation of a senior White House official charged with perjury. Mr. Bush avoided the issue in his weekly radio address, focusing instead on the war in Iraq. Clive Myrie reports now from Washington.
George W. Bush heading for his weekend retreat, Camp David, escaping the hothouse of Washington but carrying the baggage of a growing number of crises. Still ringing in his ears, the words of a special prosecutor accusing a top White House official of serious criminal charges. A new nominee for the Supreme Court must be found, and this week the American death toll in Iraq reached 2,000. Today, the president sought solace in Iraq during his radio address.
3 years ago, when Saddam Hussein ruled with an iron grip, the prospect of Iraqis voting on a democratic constitution would have been unthinkable. Now the Iraqi people have shown that individual rights and rule by the people are universal principles, and that these principles can become the basis for free and decent governments throughout the Middle East.
But with top aide Louis Libby's indictment on criminal charges over the CIA leak scandal, the president's attempts to focus on other issues could be overshadowed for months. His closest advisor, Karl Rove, is still under investigation. Democrats smell blood and argue the leak scandal shows a White House hell-bent on defending flawed reasoning for going to war with Iraq. So, with all his problems, where does the president go from here?
I think the main thing the president wants to do is win back his base. He wants to secure the conservatives who brought him to power. And the way he's going to do that is by changing the subject. He doesn't want to be talking about the credibility, the honesty, or of his administration, or the causes of the war. He wants to get back to some of the issues that brought him to power in the first place.
Second-term presidents usually have scandals to deal with, and George W. Bush is no exception. He has plenty of time to regain his footing, but these are some of the darkest days of his political life. Clive Myrie, BBC News, Washington.
The Independent Police Complaints Commission is investigating a high-speed car accident in Sussex, which killed 5 people. Police say a patrol car had spotted the vehicle minutes before it collided with a wall near Hastings in the early hours of this morning. Doctors treating George Best say his condition is continuing to improve, but it will be several days before he's out of danger. The former Manchester United star is still in the intensive care unit of a London hospital. Passengers flying out of one of Britain's fastest growing regional airports will have to pay an extra £5 departure fee. Cornwall County Council says it's introducing the charge to secure the future of Newquay Airport. But one airline says it's cutting its flights in protest, as Patrick Bartlett reports.
Pristine beaches and exhilarating surf are what attract many visitors to Newquay. Increasingly, they arrive by plane. More than 300,000 will fly in this year, most with Ryanair. But the airline's now threatening to halve its daily flights there. Ryanair's average fare from Stansted is £27, but add the new £5 airport fee and it says Newquay will be too expensive compared to its other destinations.
People will travel in less numbers, the demand will be far less, in our estimation probably 50% less, and we've merely adjusted our services to reflect that demand.
But so far, other airlines using Newquay are staying out of the dispute. This is what the row's about. All passengers leaving Newquay must now buy a £5 ticket from a machine like this. They won't let you board your flight unless you've got one. The County Council, which owns the small airport, wants to raise £3 million for an extension to cope with its extra passengers. It suspects Ryanair's reaction is designed to scare other airports from introducing a similar tax.
Ryanair have a business plan, and I believe that is to fly people around Europe and most probably the rest of the world for nearly nothing and get the destinations to pay for it. If the people who are flying in don't pay for that cost, then the local taxpayer does. And that cannot continue for much longer.
Although there's no sign yet of other airports copying Newquay, they'll be watching the standoff with keen interest. Patrick Bartlett, BBC News, Newquay.
Now with the roundup of all the football results and the rest of today's sport, here's Chris Hollins. Chris.
Thanks, Matthew. Good evening. Great Britain's Rugby League team made a losing start to the Tri-Nations Series. They were beaten by New Zealand at Loftus Road. The Kiwis scored 7 tries as they won the match by 42 points to 26. Kevin Geary reports.
Up against the clear Tri-Nations favourites, Great Britain needed to come out with all guns blazing, but they succeeded only in shooting themselves in the foot, twice. Shambolic defending, handing the Kiwis 2 tries inside the first 6 minutes. By half-time, they were 24-8 in arrears after Brent Webb had gone over for a 3rd try and were facing a hammering. Courageously, though, in the second half, they battled their way back into contention, and when Paul Johnson twisted free to complete an opportunistic hat-trick, they were only 4 points behind and riding on a wave of momentum. But New Zealand's defences couldn't be breached again. Instead, twice they broke up field to expose gaps left by weariness, securing a 42-26 victory. They're now virtually assured of a place in the final. To get there themselves, Great Britain will probably have to beat mighty Australia twice. Kevin Geary, BBC News.
Now for a roundup of all the football action. Don't forget you can see it all on Match of the Day after the news. So if you don't want to know the results, it's time to turn the volume down on the television and look away for just a moment. Now, so Alex Ferguson had a miserable evening at Middlesbrough as Manchester United lost 4-1. Gaizka Mendieta was the Borough hero. He scored twice. That was United's biggest defeat for 4 years. Frank Lampard helped Chelsea get back to winning ways with 2 goals against Blackburn Rovers. The champions won 4-2. Wigan picked up their 7th league win in 8 games thanks to a late goal from Pascal Chimbonda against Fulham. Tottenham and Arsenal shared the points at White Hart Lane in the North London derby. Robert Pires grabbed an equaliser for the Gunners after Ledley King had given the home side the lead. Elsewhere, Everton are off the bottom of the table after a 1-0 victory at Birmingham City. There were also wins for Bolton, Liverpool and Portsmouth. So Chelsea are now 9 points clear at the top. Wigan are in 2nd, Tottenham are 3rd and Bolton are up to 4th after overtaking Charlton. At the bottom, it's not looking good for Sunderland or Birmingham after defeats today. Everton fans, though, can smile again after their 2nd win of the season. In Scotland, Hearts were beaten for the first time in the league this season by their Edinburgh rivals, Hibernian. Guillaume Bozolin and Gary O'Connor, the Hibs scorers, in a 2-0 win. Dunfermline lost 3-0 against Motherwell. Falkirk drew 1-1 with bottom club Livingston. Kilmarnock beat Aberdeen 4-2. Chris Boyd scored twice there. And the pressure is building on Alex McLeish after Rangers were held to a 1-1 draw at home to Inverness. Hearts stay top, but could be overtaken if Celtic win at Dundee United tomorrow. Hibs are third and Rangers are down in fourth. Colin Montgomery led a 6-shot lead, slipped through his fingers in the Volvo Masters at Valderrama today, but he's still on course to win his 8th Order of Merit title. Montgomery looked comfortable until he played a poor approach to the 17th green. He found the water here and he dropped 2 shots. He'll begin tomorrow's final round tied for the lead with Spain's Sergio Garcia. They're both at 10 under par, 4 clear of the pack. Leicester's bright start in the Heineken Cup came to an end in Paris. They lost 12-6 to Stade Francais. Jérôme Filol kicking all the points for the home side. Elsewhere, there were wins for Munster, Biarritz, Saracens, Bath and Llanelli. And that's all the sports news for me.
Chris, thanks very much. Finally, don't forget the clocks go back 1 hour tonight, but the nation's most famous timekeeper won't be chiming at all. Big Ben's clock has been stopped for a weekend of essential repairs. Its longest shut down for 22 years. Here's Nick Thatcher.
Big Ben's been silent since 8 this morning. As the work began, the hands of the great clock spun round slowly to rest at midday. A sight which both confused and amused London's many tourists.
You always hear British time everywhere in the world. And I come here and I look at my watch and wow, it's broken. It's disappointing.
It's monumental because, you know, 20 years, they say it happens every 20 years, correct? And we were here for it, so it kind of makes it special.
The maintenance work will see tests carried out on different sections of the clock, and the rubber hammer buffers which strike the bells will be replaced.
We can get these freezing up, and that will affect the bells. So instead of that wonderful ding, ding, ding that you just heard, you will get a donk, donk, donk. Now, it's quite rare, because we don't tend to get those very cold winters, but we've reached a stage now where we feel we really need to replace those rubbers.
This is the longest the chimes have been silenced in more than 20 years, and engineers will work against the clock to ensure Big Ben is back in business in time for tomorrow evening. Nick Thatcher, BBC News, Westminster.
Time's up for us. There'll be news throughout the night over on BBC News 24, but from all of us here, a very good night. Good night.
Hello there, good evening. As I'm sure you are aware, this October is proving to be a very mild month. And again tonight we've got a frost-free night, temperatures staying in double figures thanks to the rather gusty southerly wind. That wind's also bringing some rain as well, some showery rain gradually edging east across England and Wales. And then later in the night we'll see more organised rain developing to the southwest, particularly for southwest England and Wales. Just look at those temperatures though, 12 to 15 Celsius. Really quite amazing. So a mild but pretty disappointing start to Sunday. The rain affecting much of western mainland Britain, clipping Northern Ireland for a time as well. That will gradually ease eastwards through Sunday, probably spoiling quite a nice start in East Anglia and the southeast later. But behind that rain band, things will cheer up quite well through the afternoon. So a bright, breezy afternoon for Northern Ireland with temperatures up to 15. Some late showers, though, later in the afternoon. Much of southwest Scotland, West Wales doing very well in the afternoon after such a miserable start. It'll be beautiful with some autumn sunshine. Still breezy, but pleasantly warm at 17 degrees and a lovely end to the day across the West Country. But just look at that contrast. If you're driving along the M4, you'll notice the difference with a really dull and dark end to the day across eastern England. The clock's going back, as we know. The rain clinging for dear life to the extreme southeast through Sunday night and Monday, but eventually pulling away. We'll all be in the same boat then, with blustery showers and sunny spells. And then as we start November, a window of fine weather on Tuesday, but all change again midweek. Bye-bye.